January 13th, 2021. All right, guys, I found a great article that I want to read with you today. And for those that want to read it yourself, I'll put a link in the description for those that want to read along with me. Great, and thank you. I'll just jump right in and then maybe have some closing remarks at the end. This is about collectivism, statism, communism, where we're headed right now, unless we stand up. So let's jump in. Okay, scoot in here. I notice I lean forward a lot in my videos because I want to grab that microphone real nice and close. All right. Yep, by Dr. Russell Blaylock. The guy's a hero. Okay. This is from vaccinationcouncil.org from the year 2012. Collectivism, Family or State. An essay on mandatory vaccination by neurosurgeon Russell Blaylock, MD. He says, a recent article appearing in the January issue of the American Medical Association Journal of Ethics, which they have none, titled Virtual Mentor Should Alert Thinking Americans to a Dangerous Precedent Being Set by So-Called Health Authorities. Actually, the concept of compulsion by the state for the public good, the greater good, is not all that new and is consistent with a collectivist philosophy. So, you may ask, what is collectivism? Basically, collectivism does not recognize the individual as being important to society. In fact, its philosophers feel that the individual, especially the intellectual, is an enemy of the public good. Collectivism most recognized political expression in modern times is known as socialism. Yep, we're hearing a lot about that. Actually, communism. See the Communist Manifesto. The founders of our country did not hold this view. Rather, they reasoned that the individual must be protected from collectivism at all levels. Hence the Constitution and Bill of Rights. The court system was designed during the founding to protect the rights of the individual. Within the founders' philosophical view, the family is central to the individual's rights. The family is central to the individual's rights. That is, it is the father and or mother who represent the most protective structure for innocent children and not the state. The state intervenes only in the most extreme cases of abuse, and this is carefully regulated so as to prevent abuse by the state. Since the Civil War, we have witnessed a gradual yet progressive move toward the collectivist philosophy, where the state replaces the family and individuals are sacrificed in the name of the public good. That's where we're at today, guys, where the state replaces the family and the individuals are sacrificed in the name of the public good. This process has gained rapidly on many fronts, but one of the most disturbing is in the area of public health. This is where they're able to drive this initiative forward the fastest. Ronald Reagan warned in 1961, one of the traditional methods of imposing statism or socialism on a people has been by the way of medicine. It is very easy to disguise a medical program as a humanitarian project. Students of the history of collectivism will also recognize that calls for increasing the power of the state over the individual is always couched in terms of public good and protecting the public. Sound familiar? That is, it is a crisis that demands collectivist solutions, and these solutions must be accepted without debate or analysis, which is again where we're at today. Solutions that must be accepted without any debate or analysis by the critics or by more thoughtful and cautionary individuals. The perfect example of this is the debate over vaccine effectiveness and safety. With that short introduction to collectivist thinking, let us examine the paper, The Virtual Mentor, written by Suzanne Shealy and Joel Meyer. They begin by lamenting the fact that the previous system of recruiting volunteers for testing experimental vaccines has fallen on hard times. That is, fewer people are volunteering. People are wising up. They note that the volunteers are fully informed of possible complications caused by the vaccines, and these volunteers have consented to be used in the experiments, in essence, as human guinea pigs. And I guarantee you, they are not warned of the possible complications. Not completely. The former assurance is not true, as several studies have shown that quite often recognized serious potential complications are withheld from the volunteer. Of course they are, or they wouldn't volunteer. Because of this fall in volunteers, they tell us, quote, "But relying on altruism alone to facilitate clinical trials is potentially unsustainable and ethically contentious," end quote. So, what is their solution to this problem? Compulsory involvement in vaccine studies is one alternative solution that is not as outlandish as it might seem on first consideration. That's right, mandatory involvement in vaccine trials is therefore perhaps more akin to military conscription. In both conscription and obligatory trial participants, individuals have little or no choice regarding involvement and face inherent risk over which they have no control. All for the greater good of society. Come on. This statement is reminiscent of a statement made by the Fabian socialist and first general director of UNESCO, Aldous Huxley, in which he said concerning the implementation of radical eugenics programs, again, it all ties back to eugenics, guys, "It will be important for UNESCO to see the eugenic problem be examined with the greatest care, and that the public mind is informed of the issues at stake so that much that is now unthinkable, what's now unthinkable may at least become thinkable." Again, where we've reached. The extreme left collectivists bristle at being compared to the National Socialists, so I will instead examine the source of Hitler's eugenic thinking, another unthinkable idea made thinkable, by careful manipulation of American social opinion makers in the very early 1900s. Keep in mind that all these eugenic programs eventually resorted to compulsion because the public could not be convinced to voluntarily accept the deadly prescriptions being proposed by the state and self-appointed protectors of the public good. The beginning of the eugenic movement started with suggestions of human betterment through the selective breeding by British biologist Sir Francis Galton in 1882. Okay, selective breeding. At the beginning of the 20th century, back to that, bloodlines are very important to these people. Okay, so genealogy and understanding bloodlines is very important in targeting who gets to procreate and have babies in the future. All right? At the beginning of the 20th century, 1904 through the 1920s, the need for enforcement of eugenic programs became a matter of public health. Okay, these were enforced for public good. The eugenics movement was heavily funded by the Rockefeller Foundation, who is driving a lot of the initiatives today, and the Carnegie Institution from its inception and continued even beyond the National Socialist era. It is also important to appreciate that the public health movement was led by some of the most prominent individuals in society. Harvard-educated Charles Davenport was at center stage in this terrifying public health movement. The elite, or corrupt as I like to call them, proponents of mandatory eugenic policies included Professor Henry Osborn, director of the American Museum of Natural History, Alexander Graham Bell, wife of railroad magnate E.H. Harriman. The prestigious Cold Spring Harbor Biology Laboratory, James Wilson, Secretary of the Department of Agriculture, and Major Leonard Darwin, Charles Darwin's son, Winston Churchill, Theodore Roosevelt, and Linus Pauling, just to name a few. University and college courses were provided for America's most prestigious institutions of learning, such as Harvard, Princeton, Yale, Purdue, University of Chicago, Northwestern University, New York University, and the University of California at Berkeley. Soon, eugenics courses were being adopted by high school textbooks and courses. The Journal of the American Medical Association, JAMA, proudly covered the international eugenics meetings in London and did so in glowing terms. The goal of the eugenics proponents was to eventually sterilize 14 million people in the United States alone and millions more worldwide. Before clearer heads prevailed, at least 60,000 Americans were coercively sterilized, and this is considered a conservative figure. Support for this monstrous program was based on pseudoscience and powerful state-supported propaganda, just as we are witnessing in the present-day vaccine mania, and then magnified a million times more in the COVID mania. Each generation thinks it's far more intelligent than the previous generation, and therefore comparisons with earlier abuse of science and public policy cannot be made. Yet, support for forced sterilization and internment camps for the unfit were strongly supported by men considered to be the giants of biology and medicine, as well as influential men of government and private foundations. Man, we've come full circle from going away from eugenics to here we are again. Of course, it never went away, it was just rebranded. Eugenics mania spread across the world among the most intelligent class. Opponents were labeled enemies of the public good. And as individuals unqualified to discuss the problem, just as we hear today with vaccine safety, vaccine mandate proponents state that opponents of their program are uneducated and unqualified to speak on the subject. Yet they're the most qualified. Typically, they know the most about the biological science, even when they are far greater experts in the field of vaccine safety and pathophysiology than the proponents. Russell Blaylock says, I've written 8 papers and several chapters on the mechanisms of vaccine-induced neuropathology and neurological injury, and proposed plausible mechanisms to explain a link to vaccine-induced autism. Yet the only person quoted on this issue in the national media is Paul Offit. Still to this day, it's the exact same case. Who not only profits handsomely from his own vaccine creation, but admitted in an interview that he knows nothing about neurology or brain function. So how would he know anything about the consequences? It was assumed by the eugenics social engineers that all crime, mental subnormality, laziness, alcoholism, blindness, and antisocial behaviors were hereditary and therefore controllable by forced sterilization. Laws were passed based on this phony science, and tens of thousands suffered. And this continues in rebranded programs. Lucien Hou, one of the most prominent names in ophthalmology, in 1918 took up the cause of eugenics prevention of blindness and poor vision. Just as Offit carries the vaccine banner, he compiled data showing that 3.8 million was the national cost of blindness, and that mandatory sterilization of the blind would prevent this national tragedy. The problem was that over 90% of blindness had no hereditary link. Despite this, he campaigned tirelessly to have laws passed for forced sterilization of all the blind individuals. Hou did not stand alone, but was given valuable support by the AMA and the Carnegie Institution. He suggested that authorities wait to discover a blind person and then go back and get the rest of the family. By 1921, the Eugenic Record Office, ERO, and the AMA section on ophthalmology had drafted a more comprehensive law that targeted all the people with imperfect vision. Dr. Ho insisted that law include provisions to imprison the visually impaired. The AMA provided a list of prominent medical professors to support Ho's legislative proposals. All of this is reminiscent of the present vaccine battle. And it continues. Sheehy and Meyer shake this argument that because the public benefits from vaccine trials, people should be made to participate against their will. We must then ask, should people be forced to have an experimental surgical procedure because, if successful, it will benefit many? Should they be forced to take experimental medications? This principle of mandatory medical procedures could also apply to experimental brain surgeries, such as the infamous frontal lobotomy. After all, at the time, it was thought to greatly benefit thousands and was used to treat sadness and depression, unruly behavior in children and anxiety. Sure, the effects were irreversible, but so was the neurological damage caused by vaccine reactions. Get it? Sure. The effects are irreversible, but so are the neurological damage caused by vaccine reactions. The history of medicine should have taught us that excitement over a treatment or procedure can often turn to disaster down the road. Thalidomide was considered to be a very safe tranquilizer. No one knew at the time that if given to pregnant mothers, the child would be born of crippling limb deformities. We now know that it causes abortion. What if taking thalidomide had been mandatory at the time? Millions would have been crippled or lost. And that, I believe, if it's the word I'm thinking of, is an ingredient in the Moderna vaccine. Let me look that up while we're talking. Just one sec. Just go back a few. Nope, tromethamine. That was tromethamine. So thalidomide is different. Tromethamine is the ingredient used for clinical use in abortion, which is an ingredient in the Moderna vaccine. Thalidomide was something else, causing crippling deformities in utero. All right. We are learning a great deal about the safety issue associated with vaccines, but much of this careful research is being ignored. Oh, good. Tom Lenovic and Shaw, Stranecka, and others have published a number of very important papers in this field, and I think I have made a compelling case for a mechanism called immunoexcitotoxicity, which I share a ton of information on, to explain the effect of multiple vaccines on brain development, including vaccine-associated seizures, which my son suffers from for life. All of us should be terrified by the totalitarian nature exercised by the proponents of mandatory vaccines. Many are openly calling not only for mandatory vaccination, but also hiding critical safety data from the public so as to give the impression of vaccine safety, which almost everybody blindly believes, including myself years ago, until I looked at the data. Programs for mandated eugenics ended when the public realized the true result of such plans. This history is now rarely spoken about. Not anymore. People are waking up. Yet present vaccine policies are just as frightening because they hold the potential to irreversibly destroy the lives of millions of our children. I would make an open proposal to those who support mandated vaccines and participation in vaccine trials. The first participants should be the CEOs of the pharmaceutical vaccine makers, their board members, their families, and then all their employees and their families. I second that. All those who have written or proposed legislation or rules for mandating vaccines should also be submitted for testing, including Sheehy and Myers. This, of course, includes all of their families. At the top of the list should be Paul Offit and Peter Hotez. I can assure you that if such a policy were instituted, we would be hearing a whole lot less about mandatory vaccines. Ain't that the truth? Oh man, I love him. It's fantastic. And so much so, and then this paper actually cites a ton of his research. And this is up until 2012. He actually has published quite a bit since then in the realms of immunoexcitotoxicity, showing more of the science of how clearly these vaccines are destroying our brains, causing autoimmune disease, causing cancers. He also has some great papers on cancer that were published as recent as 2019. He's a fantastic, God-fearing doctor, neurosurgeon. He's absolutely brilliant. If you haven't read his books, I can't recommend them enough. So anyway, some of my thoughts. That's not me. Okay. For years, I've shared everything that I learn about vaccines to anybody willing to listen, and I really focus on my family, right? Please just listen. You've seen the damage from Holden, and in their mind they're going, yeah, but you can't prove that's the vaccine. Yes, I can. I watched it happen with my own freaking eyes. It was the vaccines. And then it took me years and years of research to truly understand exactly how it happened, and I lay it out here. This is happening to everybody. Not everybody goes into intractable epilepsy like Holden did, but we all have neurological damage. We have learning disabilities. We have attention deficit disorders. We have anxiety and depression. We have gut dysbiosis. We have autoimmune diseases like type 1 diabetes, multiple sclerosis, demyelinating diseases like multiple sclerosis, chronic pain, fibromyalgia, all these autoimmune diseases, rheumatoid arthritis, asthma, allergies. And you're seeing them all play out with the stupid COVID-19 vaccine that's being rushed to market with the stupid emergency use authorization, which all of this was planned out. We saw lockstep from the Rockefeller Foundation back in 2010. There was the SPARS event simulation that Johns Hopkins did in 2017 that really lays out the whole thing as it's unraveling right now, including emergency use authorization, plans of using unproven drugs with horrific side effects, and then playing social media against each other, creating this duality of, oh, I'm so glad I got the new treatment, the new unproven treatment, because I feel protected now, and then the reality where people are going, oh my gosh, I got it and I'm having these horrible reactions, or my dad died, or my mom died, my husband died, I'm having seizures now, I have this, my foot is dying, all these horrible reactions that are happening in real time are being downplayed. Oh, well, that we don't know that if that really was the cause, or yeah, we knew some things could happen to certain people, we don't know why, but it's for the public good that you all go along with this, right? So you can see the groundwork was being laid with the fact that people were no longer participating in these dangerous trials. And so how do you keep people going with these unproven technologies? Create a fake emergency to push through every agenda, right? Social control, biometrics, digital IDs, digital currency, complete surveillance of everything. In fact, we no longer matter, right? We have artificial intelligence to do our jobs. You don't get to own property anymore. You don't get to own anything, in fact. We're just going to put you on a universal income until you guys hate life and kill yourselves and die, or take our medicines and end up dying, and we, the corrupt, will inherit the earth, right? That's the plan. The individual doesn't matter. We have to be lulled into this collectivist idea for the greater good, buying into our own death and destruction along the way, not knowing that the greater good was the greater destruction of humanity. Okay, this is not about a virus. Viruses are messaging tools of adaptation to help us evolve, right? Anyway, I don't share a ton about the COVID-19 vaccine specifically because we're all watching it play out with our own eyes, and some are blind. Most are blind. They see these horrible reactions, go, I don't believe it. Vaccines are safe. Vaccines are safe. I'm focused on vaccination as a whole. I'm not going to be one of those people that says, oh, well, I'm not anti-vaccine. I'm pro-safe vaccine, and just one hasn't been invented yet. No, I'm not that. I am anti-vaccine. We don't need it. God gave us everything we need in our blueprint, in our design, to live healthy, strong lives as long as we honor our bodies, as long as we put faith in what he gave us, including the earth, and honor ourselves and live in harmony with it and expose ourselves to good and not bad, right? Everything that man has invented in the name of science has come with a cost. It's brought us convenience and it's brought us some type of cost, right? Either we're polluting the earth, we're polluting our bodies, we're causing destruction, we're causing autoimmune disease, we're trading short-term infection, which is building our immune system and increasing cancer surveillance and increasing health and vitality, and trading that week or two of sickness for lifelong chronic illness in the form of neurological disorders and autoimmune disease and obesity and gut dysbiosis. You name it, we are fools. We are fools. Stop being a fool, okay? Start learning about your body. Start learning about nourishment. Start learning about honoring yourself first. You want to do something for the greater good, for public good? Fix your life. Fix yourself. That would help. And if we all did that, the greater good would just take care of itself. All right? The end. Love you guys. Till next time.